Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, welcome back to Lake Liberty, and welcome back to Planet Coaster 2. Today we're going to be building a huge water slide. Let's go! This is the lake that we built last episode. Before we get to the water slide, we're going to expand this to its full size and build an island in the middle so the guests can get out and sunbathe. We're going to use the stamp tool to just start filling out this lake, getting it to the size we want. The edges you can see here are how big I want it to be. They don't need to be smooth or anything like that because they're going to be completely covered up with rocks and foliage so it looks natural. And then we're just going to leave this little island in the middle. And then to get our guests to come up on here and sunbathe, we just need to put a path in. Now we can play around with the edges of this path and get it looking better later. But what I want to do now is get some rocks in and start making the island itself look natural. So we'll take some of the tiger rocks with that cool moss effect on the top and start placing these around the edges of this lake. We use the path tool to make the lake a bit less square later on as well. But to begin with, I just want to get a little bit of it done and make sure that this is going to work and it's going to look natural once we've finished putting all the pieces into it. So we're going to use the draw tool now and just chop off a little bit of the island, give it a bit more of a natural shape. We'll do a bit more of that later as well. And then we'll continue the rocks round to the wooden part of the front, which is going to be the only part of it that is visible. We needed a little bit of it that isn't covered up so that the guests will actually come up here. We'll do some terrain painting, get this starting to look more natural, get some gravel in there, get some rocks in there, and then we'll start lifting the terrain up to meet the rocks that we placed in as well. Get rid of that flat look, and then we're going to use some more of the aquatic rocks that we used last week to join the sides of the island onto the rest of the lake. Then we can move on to some foliage. There are some gorgeous trees in this game. This ash tree is one of my favourites, and we're going to put a willow in a second, which might be my favourite out of all of them. We get some of these beach cabbage bushes in as well, and then some ivy along the wood at the front just to soften that off a bit. There we go, you can see that willow there, it's such a nice plant. We'll do some work on this line of wood at the front to make it a bit less straight, but let's see how it's shaping up. Looks really nice from up here. What we're going to do now is put some sun lounges in to encourage the guests to come up here, give them something to do while they're up here. This is going to give them a really nice view of the build that we do in a minute as well. We'll add one of these for safety, and then we'll take a look at what it's going to look like from the island for the guests. There we go. See the big coaster in the background? And from the entrance to the lake, the island is starting to look really nice now. You'll see a tiny bit more detailing later, but let's move on and start building our first water slide. The first ride on the list is the body flume, and that is the exact one that we want because we're going to be building a recreation of Storm Surge at Lake Compounce, which is a lighthouse themed water slide. I think it originally dates back to the 1990s, but they've recently made it a bit more exciting and added loads of like super heavy rock music, strobe lights, all sorts of stuff inside it. And that's what I want to try and replicate here. So we're going to make something that looks really nice and peaceful and classic so it doesn't spoil the view of the lake. But when you get up close to it, it's got some theming, it's going to have lasers, smoke, heavy metal, all sorts of stuff in it to make it an exciting ride, and the speed of the ride is going to be pretty wild as well. And the cool thing about this slide is that not only does it wrap around the lighthouse as it goes down, it actually goes into the lighthouse and out the other side. So for the moment I've just done a sort of spiral going down towards the ground and got the platform and the stairs in so we can start building the lighthouse around it. And then once the lighthouse is complete, we can get the slide to exactly wrap around it and go in and out of the building itself. For the body of the lighthouse, I've built one circle of bricks, and now we're just going to copy it below itself and then use the scaling tool to make each one of them just slightly bigger than the one above it, so we get the sort of tapered look of the lighthouse as it gets towards the bottom. We'll do a lot of playing around with the colours. Going to basically use the same colour scheme as the real ride, although we will be renaming it here. So just playing around with whites and reds, and then we're going to get some black in it as well, just for a bit of interest. We usually only use one or two colours in the builds on this channel, so it's been interesting doing this one because not only do we have the red, white and black here, the top of the lighthouse is blue, and it's got a big blue dome on it as well. We're going to build that dome in a second. First, I want to build the railings in. I think these allow people to walk all the way around the top of the lighthouse. They won't be doing that here because they're just going to be going up the stairs and onto that platform, but it's a nice detail. I wanted to get that in here. We're using that circular piece you can see in the middle to rotate everything around to get everything nice and smooth and joined up. We'll take this pole and shrink it down and use this to make the supports that keep the little gantry at the top here attached to the top of the lighthouse. So we'll just have a couple of these pieces, and once we've got this all together on that little base there, we can just copy this and spin it around the top of the building and get a circular gantry that goes all the way around it. You guys know all about the circle trick, we do it all the time on this channel, but in case you're new, what we do is we take this piece here, the circular one, and then we attach the pieces we want to use to one side of it, duplicate it over to the other side so that we have an exact match there, and then we select both of those sets of pieces and spin them round, and it puts them into a nice perfect circle for you. If you are new to my channel, by the way, then hello, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're not and you're wondering where Planet Zoo's gone, then we should be back in Belmont Zoo on Wednesday. That's the railings done. We're just going to spin those round into the right position. There's an imperfection in the circle, so if we move it to the platform, then that will be the piece that we delete that enables the guests to get on there. And then we will get started on the big blue dome that tops this entire build. We're going to be using the circle trick again for this, and we're going to be using a new piece that I have already used in 3 different builds, I think. It's really useful. It's the roof trim. We'll keep copying this on top of itself, and for every 3 that we put down, we're going to rotate it inwards using the angle snap so we get the same angle each time. And we'll just keep doing that until it gets to the middle of the circular piece that we are rotating around. So we'll get a few more of these in. There we go, that's pretty much in the middle. And now we can select it and duplicate it across. We'll just straighten it up first, and then we will end up with a nice looking section of dome here. And then when we combine those two, we can rotate them and keep doing that until we've got a dome. Don't forget to delete the second of the circular pieces when you do this, otherwise you'll end up with absolutely millions of them that you have to delete when you're finished. But you can see how it's shaping up here. We'll just keep rotating and cloning this until we have the finished dome. We'll then rotate some metal supports in so it's not just floating. And there we go, that's starting to look really nice. Let's move on and get the water slide itself going exactly where we want it to go. This was by far the most difficult part of the build, and it's to do with how Planet Coaster 2 works. So if you were designing this ride in real life, then you've got 2 things that you need to achieve with it. You need to be able to get guests from the ground up to the platform at the top, and then you need to get them back down to the ground via the slide. Now IRL, obviously what you do is design the stairs and the slide in conjunction with each other, so the slide never meets the stairs, and there's room for both things. But in Planet Coaster 2, when you put the platform in, the game automatically generates the stairs for you. They look really cool, they're recolorable, I'm very happy with them, but the only thing you can do is choose which side of the platform they attach to, and the game will just build them for you, which means you can't choose where the stairs go, because in this build there's only one side of the platform that it makes sense for them to go on if they're going to be inside the building. So what we've got to do is get the water slide to go around the stairs without being able to choose where the stairs are. That has led to some pretty crazy bends in this slide. The fear and nausea rating's a little higher than I'd like it to be, but it's still within the tolerances of most of the guests, I think, and the excitement rating's pretty high for a water slide as well. So we should have our fair share of guests on it when it's completed. I've added some grunge decals in just to break the paint up a bit, make it look more realistic. And now we're going to add the supports to the flume. So I'm basing this on the real Storm Surge. I don't know anything about supports for water slides, so I'm just copying exactly what I see in the original, so they should be realistic. So we're going to resize loads of these support beams and just get the same arrangement that I saw in my reference photos, and then we can start attaching these to the slide once it's done. So we've got these 3 supports coming out of the central support, that goes under the slide, and then there's another bit that attaches that to the slide. So we'll just put these in all the bends, and some attaching it to the floor as well. And then we can work on the parts where the slide goes into the building. So we're just deleting some bricks to make a window, and then we'll put some window ledges in and just start making it look nice and seamless. We'll add some actual windows in later as well. And then we can add a door in as well. The flumes, even massive ones like this, just use normal paths, not Q paths like I've got here. So I'll replace that in a minute. I don't want to use one of the door pieces here because the guests will walk straight through it. I just want to build a door frame with these wooden pieces and leave it open, and then the guests will walk through this gap and go up the stairs onto the ride. And with that, we should probably test it out. Now, I warn you that on-board camera is a little janky on these water slides at the moment. I assume that's going to be fixed in the first patch. The guests sit a little high, so the camera clips through the top of the ride. But the main issue I'm having is that the ride is currently going straight through those stairs, which would lead to the death of the guests, so we should probably fix that. So we're going to go inside the lighthouse and start wrangling these water slide pieces to get them to go around these stairs, which is not easy, as I mentioned earlier, but we should be able to get it right. This section here is the main offender. I can't move it enough to get it away from going through those stairs. So what we need to do is go back 2 sections before and after it and start playing with them until we can get the whole thing to go past those stairs without having any sort of right angle turns in it. Once we've done that, it's on to something really fun, the event sequencer. This is what enables us to trigger various objects within the ride. So what we're going to do is add some lasers first of all. So in order to do that, we need to set up trigger points. We have a trigger point for when the rider gets onto the ride, and then another one for when they go through into the lighthouse. So what will happen is as soon as they get onto the ride and they push off, the music will start playing, the laser beams will turn on, and then just before they go through the laser beams, they will turn off. And then when they hit the pool, there will be an enormous and absolutely ridiculous splash that I've created with this effect here, which is definitely my favorite thing in the ride. Onto the splash zone. So I put that little pool in there already just to test it out. Now we want to make one that actually looks good. So we're going to be going with the draw tool and the edit tool to start making some really interesting shapes here. If you're a bit lost with the pathing in this game, I released a tutorial on Wednesday with lots of helpful hints for pathing in, so check that out if you're struggling with anything. We'll put a member of staff in just to keep an eye on the guests coming down. And then we're going to choose a uniform for our staff that will be used throughout the park. So I think just a simple white tee and some bright red shorts looks really good and goes in with a lot of the colours that we're using here. And then we can start playing with the paths and getting a bit of a plaza going on here and a little space where people can watch people come out the end of the ride or wait around while they're going to be going onto the ride, whichever they like. And then we're going to create a gap in the path here, which is going to be filled with foliage and also a sign and theming for the ride. We'll come back to the theming because before we do that, I want to put a little backstage building in. So water slides and pools need pumps and filtration, so we need somewhere to hide those. And inspired by the real storm surge, there was a really cute little wooden building just behind it. No idea what its function is, it may well be for this very reason, but I'm going to build just a little generic wooden shack in some nice colours, and we can hide any filtration required in here. And I'm also going to put in a staff room because this is going to be a long way from any of the other rides in the park. Playing around with lots of the new pieces here to find the ones I like that are going to suit this theme. Really like this big warehouse door, which we can scale to the exact size that we need. We've got a little sort of cabin style door there as well. And then I decided to put a fence in and realised there aren't any generic wooden fences in the game, so decided that we could make our own. So I'm just using this resort wall decoration and some more fence posts just to make the sort of normal wooden fence you see everywhere in the world. I've put this on the workshop. I'll put the code up on screen now. So if you want a little fence like this for your park and you don't want to build it yourself, then you can just grab it from the workshop. And then we can lay this fence along here and block out the view of the backstage building. And we'll have a little entrance for staff only in there later on as well. And once that's done, we're going to take a look at something which was much requested in Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo, and we finally have it: darkness. We're going to have a staff room and water filtration in this building, but if we move the camera inside it, it actually gets dark, like really dark. Pitch black if you leave the camera in there long enough. That's going to be amazing for dark rides and things like that later on. Now we'll take a look at something else new, the scenery brush. I've not really used this that much in the park so far because I've got a particular use for this right now. I want to cover the bottom of large parts of the lake with foliage, and you saw how big the lake is at the start of the episode. Placing those in by hand is going to take a very long time, and you can actually create your own custom scenery brushes. So we're going to create one that just uses these bushes, and we can very quickly do that. And then you can't paint directly into pools because you're not ideally supposed to put anything in there. So we're going to paint it over the floor here, and then we can simply grab it and move it into the pool and do the whole thing in about 30 seconds. That would have taken about 30 minutes previously. It's so good. Right, let's move on to details and theming, and then the build is done. So one of the things I noticed on this map today is just how big it is. These enormous hills up the top are actually buildable. So we're going to put the park's logo on a big sign here, right at the top of the hill, sort of Hollywood style, and we'll make sure it's visible from when you go into the ride. We'll just take the sign that we built last week and then add this piece of scaffolding to the back of it. Once we get it scaled and positioned and recolored, that's going to look really good. Here you go, you can see it from down here at the ride. Don't worry about all the people in the pool, they're perfectly safe. I'm going to close the pool before we open the ride, and that means that when people come down the slide, they will get straight out of the pool and nobody else will get into it. And then we can move on to the theming. So I don't want to call this Storm Surge, I want it to have its own identity, bearing in mind that lighthouses are there to keep sailors off of rocks. We're going to call this the Siren, which is the exact opposite, a mythological woman that draws sailors onto rocks. And we're also going to use the Medusa statue behind it. I know she isn't actually a siren, but maybe those snakes are eels, who knows? I think it looks really good. Before we open the Siren, I went into the menus to find the security cameras, only to discover there are no security cameras in Planet Coaster 2. So I decided to make my own. Big shout out to Beezy, who came up with the original concept for using these pieces to make a security camera. Really happy with how it looks. Let's check out the Siren. Here's the island that we built at the start of the episode. I'm really happy with how this looks, and you get a really good view of the Siren from here as well. And if we head on over there, here's the theming that greets you as you enter the ride, and I've copied it onto the front of the ride itself as well. Love this view of it from up above where you can see the lake in the background. Let's get somebody on the ride. Here's our first victim. I'm going to shut up for a second so you can hear the ridiculous music that plays as you ride down it. I wish the ride camera worked better. I'm sure that will be fixed in the next update. My favourite thing about it is the huge explosion of water that happens exactly as the guests hit the pool. So satisfying. And that's the Siren. I really hope you guys like it. Next week, we're going to be exploring some of the franchise side of things, which we haven't really touched on yet, and building a really cute little food and drink stop for the guests. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.